I'm really pleased to have one of the Mr. Privacies. Maybe as an introduction, can you give us differences? What are the major differences as working in a highly regulated company like Allianz and the Volkswagen Group?
All right, well, Allianz was a financial services industry company, so clearly BaFin was very big onto that, whereas the car industry is more regulated by exhaust fumes, as we know. So as for data protection, it is not so much influenced by BaFin as such bodies. So in that respect, we enjoyed much more freedom. So it's okay. But the difference that made me up the ship was that obviously we've got a great product. For me, after having had health data and financial data, to move on to see that third sector mobility data was just too tempting to resist. And I must say, with Volkswagen being such a large company, giving products from small firm like Seat, Skoda, all the way to the luxury brands, all the way to Bentley with 12 digital screens, it's quite amazing to sit in one of those. And clearly it was great. The thing about this, and this is why I'm very happy to be here today, is that working at a very large organization involves a terrible amount of politics. And I would rather sit with you guys here to develop simple solutions, because back home in Wolfsburg, I'm going to fly out from Ingolstadt later this day, there's so many people asking, how Dr. Draf, should we do this? And they're terrified, since diesel Volkswagen is terrified to make mistakes. So I do congratulate you that you're here, you're talking to you guys to get simple solutions, because data protection is supposed to be fun. You have to be customer-oriented, and you worry about the product. Let them worry about the data protection, information security, something like that. And this is fun. Thank you very much for inviting me. I want to extend a message of hope, and don't believe the grass is green on the other side.
It is, and you mentioned how huge Volkswagen is and the international footprint, and when we talk about mastering privacy, and also you said let DataGuard do the job, and the others should enjoy the fun. Can you give us a glimpse how the privacy management system, how your organization, the privacy organization, looks like in Volkswagen? I mean, it's really difficult to keep track in every jurisdiction because you want to be compliant, but at the same time you need to scale and be efficient. So how did you build your privacy organization? How does it look like?
It's simple. It's a bit like the European Union. I think of me as the Ulrich Kelber of Volkswagen, and I have partners, and they don't report to me or they have to obey what I say or something like that. They're happy to discuss, and I'm happy to engage in discussion with them because this is the only way how you forge smart solutions. So obviously I have somebody who's a fully fledged CPO at Ingolstadt for Audi, at Zuffenhausen working for Porsche, and obviously I don't always have the best solution, so I then discuss with them every Wednesday. This morning we have like a half-hour stand-up, and then we discuss things. Then clearly you have, like in the second round, you have the Seat, Skoda, also MAN trucks and buses. I don't know whether you people are aware that we also own Scania trucks. Scania is a very exciting product because they are very big on data lake, and they build expensive trucks. It's a truck, the choice of the owner. So when everybody else is driving MAN or the mid-brand, the owner of Kühn und Nagel will always drive Scania. Like leather interior. So very expensive, and how do they justify that? Well, there's a system called total price of ownership. A car like that, or an engine like that, a lorry like that, you will need predictive analytics on when to take the truck to the shop in order to exchange this or that part. And it's really amazing how they maintain the market share. They're like the Apple of trucks. Or let me give you another example where it's really important to be cutting edge and be focused on the customer. MAN Diesel of Augsburg. Did you know, or a question to the crowd, how many of shipped diesels engines are built or licensed from MAN of Augsburg? Just Should be any number.
40%.
That's a good guess. Or can we go higher?
60.
Not bad. Anybody more bold than that? Any bolder than that?
80.
Yes, almost. 75% of the engines, diesel engines running on today's world seas are either built or licensed from MAN in Augsburg. It's really amazing. Now, again, it's good German engineering. They have predictive maintenance. There's sensors all over this thing, so that when a ship enters a harbor, the goods is being taken off the ship and they're reloaded. And there's a team looking into that. It's a bit like Das Boot, listening to this and then fixing stuff. It's really amazing. And I'm really proud to be a member of this great company to lead the cars into the digital age, because this is where Frau Loy and I always exchange ideas on how to make sure that privacy is being observed, that cars deliver services that you customers like, and be a better product, if you will.
Yeah, and cars, vehicles will be the new smart device, right? And that poses obviously a lot of challenges. Quanch and Thomas mentioned that there are a lot of EU initiatives as part of their digital strategy, some already enacted, some still discussed, and among all those, I think the Data Act will clearly stand out, and it will affect a lot of organizations as part of their digital transformation. But in particular, the Volkswagen Group is also affected by that.
Take that up and then ask you guys a second question. Talking about the Data Act, right? Well, the Data Act basically is an idea of the European Commission to create that single digital market. So data is supposed to be commodified. Everybody gets access, and not only the big players like Volkswagen and stuff have this data, or the Apples, or the Googles, or the telco providers. Now, who among you has already set up a team thinking about what data to extract from your competitor? Any hands? See, because we're always this defensive industry, data protection, we want to protect and stuff like that. The Data Act gives you a really, really powerful tool to ask your competitor for data, and you don't have to pay much.
Exactly, and we were both together in Berlin three or 4 months ago, and when I spoke to US companies, they were like, look, whereas your European companies really focus on being compliant, we try to make a business out of that and try to see how can we extract the data that all the Alliances, Volkswagens, etc. have gathered to build our own business. And I think that's what also is the core of the Data Act, that businesses here in Europe should get ready for this kind of challenge. But how does the Volkswagen Group prepare for that? I mean, there's a team effort needed, right, with the compliance experts, the legal experts, the privacy experts, but also data engineers to extract the data.
Yes, it's a big effort. On the one hand side, we're looking at the regulatory side, what are we supposed to do? But clearly on the enactment side, we need to look at building up a data catalog with Colibra here, and to then build a data lake or data warehouse where this data is being centrally stored. Because let me add this on Volkswagen, it's a jungle. It's really a large company, and there's lots of data flying about. So implementing GDPR was also a lot of doing homework, like taking out old systems that are still flying around, but unifying that for the better of the company, the customer, and complying with the regulation. It's a huge task. So coming back, we've got two circles, two teams. One is finding out just what exactly the regulation is all about, to then secondly prepare for complying with it. And if we come up with a smart idea, then I'd be happy to also lead that team of snitching the data from the competitor.
So we spoke about the organization, how the organization is set up. I think many people here would be really curious, how does a typical day of a chief privacy officer in such huge organization look like? What does Oliver Draf do on a daily basis, if such routine even exists?
Well, clearly it does. Given that I hail from the legal profession, I was used to those get up at 9 o'clock. It was get up at 8, start your day at 9 with a leisurely coffee to then work till, I don't know, 10 o'clock or something. Well, here you're on the production side. You get up at 4 to take a plane from Ingolstadt to Wolfsburg. You will get to the office at 8 on a Monday. And then you go to the factory. And that's really the most striking bit, by the way. And everybody, hey, Frank, hi, Oliver. And it's really, really, really great on that. But I try not to spend too much time in our office, but with my team, but also go to the customers, because obviously they have difficulty coming to terms with a difficult issue like data protection. So we're talking about Geburtstagslisten and stuff like that. Then really detail, but obviously the fun stuff is on collecting data for autonomous driving. We've been discussing that with Frank. So that you need to then haggle out in a discussion with the lawyers from Düsseldorf or Munich in the afternoon. So come back to your question, the day is long, it's talking. The emails you do in the evening, and then luckily I always find time to do some sports, otherwise you get crazy.
Thank you for sharing that. You just mentioned autonomous driving. I mean, we have Mrs. Law here who is some of the regulators who will look into that from a regulatory perspective, but maybe to give the audience a glimpse what that means. And I didn't realize that until I spoke to you, to be honest. Volkswagen Group is really lucky to have this full set, because what would you imagine? Which service line, which cars will be the first cars to be deployed with autonomous driving? What do you think?
Trucks.
Yeah, exactly. And not all car manufacturers have trucks in their portfolio. So you are really lucky to also be on the lucky or not to be on the forefront of this huge innovation, and it means a lot of effort. Can you give us a glimpse how much time of this new autonomous driving and everything involved of that does the privacy department take? I don't know, general average basis. Quite a
lot, because you don't do it just at Volkswagen. You go enter partnerships with big players. We're talking about Bosch, other players, and curiously, a small company called NVIDIA. Go into the street and look for the place where you have the rear mirror. And more often than not, you'll find at least one, maybe in the new S-Series Mercedes, 3 camera holes in that little thing. And you have to negotiate those contracts, obviously, with the lawyers. But you also need to talk to the regulators, and I really want to stress this point, because I really experience this as a partnership. It's a partnership that tries to apply the regulation in a manner that allows innovation, all the while protecting the individual. But having spent best part of my professional life in Bavaria, I do hail the Bavarian supervisory authority for being active, being here, and thank you very much for spending this time with our lawyer. Please give my regards on to Mr. Will. We couldn't do it without you, because in many other states of Germany, I find that they are rather up to the task, just bluntly. So let's keep up the discussion. It's good for us, mutually good, because we really develop products that will then carry the idea of data protection out in the world. I don't want to comment competitors from the United States that have cameras on all the time. Who of you was ever approached by the law enforcement agency, the LEA, on getting data from your product in order to find out who committed or perpetrated a crime? Oh, we have. And it's getting better. We're waiting for the one moment when the police are coming saying, "Oh, Dr. Draf, there has been an abduction. We have a faint idea that the car is driving north to Hamburg to then board a ship and take the poor person abroad." Can you tell us what a car is? Obviously, now I couldn't. But I think we're not in
We
China.
need to find a solution to.
Yeah, I need to find a solution, and I think legally we do have a sound argument. But then there's always the second frontier, and that's the public opinion. So remember that the horrible abduction of this little chap. That was the son of a banker in Frankfurt, and he was hidden. And then the police guy in charge of the operation threatened torture on the one guy he had, and clearly it didn't help. But then he was charged with, the evil act of torturing a witness or something like that. So it's really difficult to manage this, being regulatorily compliant on the one hand side, but also
And
then
ethically
compliant. The digital ethics matter.
Yeah, speaking about the devil earlier, the regulator. I mean,
You said that.
yeah, I said that, and Mrs. Lloyd knows that sometimes I'm a little bit naughty in this respect. Since you're sitting here, we at least need to talk a little bit about enforcement, because as most people are aware, the biggest employer here in Germany was hit by, for German average, high amount of fine, but it was for a minor violation of the GDPR, mostly caused by human error. But what I think most people are interested in, what do you do, and how did Volkswagen react when the regulator started the investigation? What are the necessary steps? I hope most of Audi, I know some customers face that already, but how do you deal with that? And to what extent do also external parties like law firms, litigators support you in this kind of aspect, or are even essential?
Well, to be frank, I started this the good old Bavarian way. We get these questions, and I said, come on, let's answer them. What I should have done in hindsight is better call Saul. Get the lawyer on the case, because it's just not worth it. Reason being that you guys have shapen up. In that particular instance, we had the University of Brunswick take out cars to collect data. It was Golfs. They looked like, we're going to the mountains to go skiing. They had a rack and cameras and stuff. And as you may know, it was picked up in Salzburg. This is what I refer to as the Salzburg case. Laying evidence to the fact that the supervisory authorities are rather well organized. They have a system where the police of Austria put this in. Well, the thing was, this is rather conspicuous looking car. Let's pull him over. And that's when the first thing started. The guy, I don't know who he was. He certainly wasn't from us or Brunswick. He was a Lohnfahrer. So he was put on this vehicle to then just cover miles, eat miles. Well, when the police pulled him over, he went something like, I've been driving through the whole of Europe. Nobody cared, just you. So the first thing it was, we gave him a little sheet, what lines to say and what not. And just on top, I'm not talking to anybody until I get my lawyer or can I get my phone call. Now, you have to watch that. The second thing was he just had flagrantly forgotten to put on the little Videoüberwachung sign, a mistake, but really.
Human error,
but then the contract was missing because the department that sent the guys out hadn't finished the Auftragsdatenverarbeitung. I mean, you can argue, we didn't tell them what roads to take or something like that. There's a joint controllership, whatever. There was no contract there. And now I have to give kudos to the law enforcement, or the data protection supervisory authorities. They asked, okay, there's a contract, we see a contract. When was it signed? As a lawyer, you sign, you don't put a date, right? When was it signed? When was it entered in the database? So it's your system, and if you don't have it yet, you better provide a timestamp because they're going to be asking for it. So, the game the stakes are getting higher. And in the whole course, I think another couple of paperwork mistakes came up. The bad thing about it is when you talk to them, they go like, so what was your sales last year? 200 billion? We started with 77 million. Fine, can you imagine? A nightmare. So then we came down to 1.1. We could have defended, but we took it.
And but as you mentioned, and congrats to you. I mean, I think your board was really happy when you said, okay, look, it's only 1.5 million and not the proposed 77.
Well, that's the point. That's how you frame it. But it was still, I think it's outrageous. The next one we're going to contest is that we already have a letter for something else. I think we have to. Well, it's a big place, guys.
Yeah.
It's a really big place.
And you are a big organization, so it's...
Yes, clinics ready. I've got 85 people in my inner department, just data protection. And that's all it. We've got contact focal points in all major departments, and then we've got the world. This morning I flew in from Verona, our Italian importer, because who's doing monitoring? The new task of the data protection officer. You have to go and look it up. Are they taking stuff seriously? We should talk about enforcing that, because I think it's one thing to counsel everybody, but it's a second thing to really then go in and ask, hey, what did you do without counsel? Did you actually observe what we told you to do? And it's much better to come as a coach, to prepare and be audit ready, rather than be sorry. Now, actually we implemented 11 teams of 2 people spread over the world. They're being employed in the big markets like England, France, Italy, Germany, of course. I've got some 16 people looking into monitoring. It's like the data protection audit department. But we don't call ourselves audit because audit is the audit.
A bad word. So being efficient and leveraging, even though you have 85 people in your direct organization, privacy organization, leveraging efficiency is one of the crucial points. So to what extent and how important are software tools and automation of processes in order to scale as a privacy organization?
No, they're all important, and this is why I can only recommend that you look at different products and engage, because if you have a proper platform, things can move on quickly and smoothly. I find that all too often the people that we hire from other university or the law firms, customer comes in and says, hey, can I do this and that? And they go, well, that depends. You have to.
That's the answer you want to hear, right? From a legal specialist.
Well, exactly. Well, this is not how the legal profession can operate any longer. I mean, not even in law firms. I mean, look at legal tech, and quite rightly so. We have to keep abreast with what's going on out there, so that a legal platform like that is understandable, that people can understand, even though it's complicated legal stuff, is crucial. It's an absolute game changer. And personally, being a big company, we're working with the competitors' software, but we prick your ears now. We customize it to death. It's like SAP. Don't do that. Don't tweak your software. Just take it as it is. Take it as it comes out of the box, and trust your provider, because you can make your life a whole lot more miserable by doing that.
So we have roughly about 10 minutes left, and I also want to have the audience to pose some questions. So maybe last but not least, speaking a little bit about the future. I mean, we talked about EU regulations. There's a lot of things going on in the US with discussing a federal privacy law, in the UK revamping their existing UK GDPR and Data Protection Act from 2018. And also China is enacting more and more laws and enforcing it on the big techs, which for some of us might be surprising. So being a CPO in a huge international company, how will the role of this CPO look like in 5 or 10 years? Will it be the same? I assume not. I think the role was already different 5 years ago when the GDPR came into force.
Absolutely. But I believe that as a privacy officer, you have to be part of the solution. I have to stress this, you're an enabler. You're not there to say, no, you can't do that. Well, how should we do it? I don't know, but not like that. So it's completely different. You have to proactively seek out what problems there might be ahead and then apply it before they go the wrong direction, because you can waste so much development money, research and development, that you should actually go in there and talk to the big wigs, be in the IT development council to then say, okay, this is promising way to go, do it the way. The earlier you get into the game, the better it is. So actually what you want to do is be technologically always up to speed, then talk to your specialists to then come out with a solution before they're thinking about the problem.
In particular, the development life cycles of cars, they are still quite long. So if you think about issues now, they can most probably only implemented for the next generation of cars. Yeah, there are updates to some extent, but I think that's another big challenge, in particular in the automotive sector.
All right, if you want to take this along, a wonderful anecdote about Herbert Diess. I'm responsible for the Bitkom partnership of Volkswagen. So Herbert was delivering a keynote, and there was all these IT folks all clad in black. Very modern, postmodern style. Up on the stage gets Herbert, he gives his little speech, and the question was, how many product generations will it take for Volkswagen to acquire autonomous driving? He goes, maybe 2 generations. In a couple of years? No. Cars are being developed in 7.5 years is one product life cycle. So it is incredibly difficult for us because an old-fashioned organization, car is a rather complex thing. Now you say, it's a smartphone on 4 wheels. Yeah, kinda. But your smartphone can go blue and you reboot it. Your car at 150 goes blue?
Yeah.
Bad
Not
idea.
good.
So you really want to be safe about your car, so you need to test it. So yeah, cars will always take 7.5 years to build a new platform, something like that. What you can do, however, in a software style is flash the software. And I'm happy to say that since the Golf 8 and the ID3, we now have this capacity of flashing over the air. It was a big step, even though Tesla is a long around the corner. But still, in modern cars, you just pull it down and you see it on the screen, update, and that's that. So that can work. But when a car is being put out on the street, we're obliged to keep it on the street, or at least provide parts for another 12 to 15 years. What's the oldest smartphone in this room? 3?
Mine.
So, show me.
5 years.
See, 5 years. We're, that's a beauty. We're wrestling when we develop cars with the people, the purchasing department. And obviously, they want to spend the least amount possible on the product for the sales guys to get the most money possible for as little money as we invested. So we're talking about brand size, how much should you put in? And it does take a genius or a madman like Elon Musk to put in like the new truck he has. I think it's 17, like a regular car will process video data at 2 megaflops, petaflops, whatever it is. That new car is supposed to have a capacity of 17, so that's a factor of 8. And he's wasting so much on that car when it comes to the raw processing power that he's onto something here. He's a rather visionary guy, I must say. So it's a conundrum to work in the insurance field.
But challenge accepted, I'd say. Challenge accepted. So, yeah, I posed a lot of questions. I'm sure the audience is quite curious as well. So feel free. We have a mic there. If you have some questions now, aside from the networking, is the chance to raise some questions to Oliver.
So data privacy concerns in the case or in the context of autonomous driving seems like obvious. What are the other biggest challenges in terms of privacy in your industry, and also to which extent do you see limits and also barriers in terms of data sharing across your partners and along the kind of vertical production line?
Let me only briefly touch on that second part of the question, because autonomous driving does deserve some thinking. I think it's the complexity, because we are looking at 123 factories all producing data. There's obviously machines in there producing data. They're not really personal data because it's just the production machines. But to get all this data to provide them for predictive maintenance when's the machine going to break down, that's a challenge just in the sheer size of the organization. But I guess we'll get our arms around that, because we'll use the complex processes. Next thing is the IT security thing that you guys touched upon. Obviously, there's a regime called UNECE. It's Europe, but all industrialized countries have conformed to that. So new cars have to be produced according to a certain regimen, to be sure that it's always the latest software and there's accountability for it. So that's an issue. But what's really the issue that's all our minds, because it's such a big thing, it's the holy grail of the car industry, is this autonomous driving. Why is it? Now, when I drive a Porsche, who wants to have a machine drive the Porsche? Nobody, of course. But most often you're sitting in a car traffic jam. And how convenient is it, you do your emails or on the phone. So I think you need it, not only for freight, but for all of us. So if you were to take that home with you, I'm of the strong belief that autonomous driving is the cloud computing 10 years ago. Cloud computing 10 years ago, for those among you who've been in the industry, where's my data going? Is it in the United States? Maybe in China? I don't know. Hopefully it's coming back when I want it back. Autonomous driving, if you really look at it, is just a car trying not to hit an obstacle, not to run people over, stuff like that. When that technology is mastered and it's in there, no problem. As we develop cars to get there, we use sensors. These sensors have different technologies. We're talking about LiDARs, we're talking about ultrasound. It's hardly ever cameras that produce a picture that you and I can interpret. It's not a cinematic camera producing the next Han Solo, whatever adventure it is. So don't be afraid. When a car like that passes you, it's going to reduce what they have to little geometric scales. They're called Stixel. I think we showed it to you when you visited. So the reason being that a machine, the computing power that is available in the car, is rather limited. So you need to reduce the complexity by replacing a complex thing like a picture, face with a form. So I'm saying don't be afraid about autonomous driving. It's that they don't take a picture of you and want to eavesdrop on you and stuff like that.
But that poses, I think, another or big challenges, because we are used in privacy and also information security. We have standards that are used for the cloud or for ordinary devices, but in an IoT setup, you just mentioned it, you have so limited capacity that and I think that's a challenge in terms of privacy, but also information security, have to rethink how to establish respective measures to ensure privacy, but also information security. You just mentioned that every car has to adhere to this norm
Yes.
you mentioned, and it's a challenge because you cannot use all the framework and all the measures we are used to because there's limited capacity.
Well, you could, for example, and that's also an important talking point. There's this discussion about access to in-vehicle data. Obviously, the vendors want access to what the headlight produces data. The difference between a Tesla, by the way, and another car is that Tesla has so much computing power and they really understand software because they built the car around software, not the other way around, that they're only buying stupid headlights. And they're steering them from the central processing unit. Obviously, that's counter Conti or Schaeffler or Bosch. They want to sell expensive headlights because they provide the software. So,
And it's a trade-off. That's a trade-off you have to overcome.
It's a trade-off, and we have to look at it in the German perspective. You know, it's not only OEM with the big auto industry out there, consisting also of Porsche. I think we can re-employ most of the concepts that we have, and I want to conclude with saying, do trust your cars. They're going to be a safe means of transportation. And I think Shell's study says every time, even though these car-sharing cars are very conspicuous on the street, fantastic in Berlin, we share, love it. But we do like our sphere of privacy, and we do still like cars. So thank you very much for your time.
That's a great closing word. Thank you very much.